Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. Former Prime Minister Stephen Harper taking shots at Mark Carney, accusing him of taking credit for guiding Canada's economy out of the global financial crisis several years ago. Plus, the Prime Minister in London for a summit on securing Ukraine's future. It was called following Friday's blowout between Ukrainian President Zelensky and U.S. President Trump. And Trudeau to meet with King Charles today for a conversation about national sovereignty in the wake of Trump's 51st state comment.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks so much for joining us. Former Prime Minister Stephen Harper is taking shots at the Liberal leadership frontrunner. Harper has accused Mark Carney of taking undeserved credit for steering the Canadian economy out of the global financial crisis more than 15 years ago. Harper appointed Carney to run the Bank of Canada at the beginning of the 2008 financial crisis, but he says it was the then Finance Minister Jim Flaherty who made the hard calls. Harper made the attacks in a letter attached to a Conservative Party fundraising email less than a week before Liberal Party members choose their next leader and Prime Minister. Mark Carney's campaign came back accusing Harper of being called on to, quote, save Pierre Poilievre from a historic drop in support. U.S. tariffs on Canadian and Mexican goods are set to kick off on Tuesday. U.S. President Donald Trump agreed to pause until March 4th an executive order to implement an across-the-board 25% tariff with a lower levy on Canadian energy. But another last-minute pause could avert a North American trade war. Ottawa has promised retaliatory tariffs. Meanwhile, Ontario Premier Doug Ford says he's ready to rip up a $100 million contract with Elon Musk's Starlink system, and he's ordered Ontario liquor stores to pull American alcohol from their shelves.
I don't start a tariff war, but we're going to win this tariff war. I've directed the LCBO, we're the largest purchaser of alcohol in the world, to remove every bit of U.S. alcohol off the shelves. I know my good friend, the governor of Kentucky, he's losing his mind right now. I said, you better talk to your president. Mitch McConnell, senior senator from Kentucky, they're losing their mind. Then we're going to cancel Starlinks right away from Elon Musk. Not that $100 million makes a difference for him, but it's principle. I've directed the procurement of over $30 billion of goods not to go to the U.S., to make sure we buy Ontario first. I've never seen patriotism like this in my entire life, running wild across the country. And we're just going to keep ramping it up. If they want to try to annihilate Ontario, I will do everything, including cut off their energy, with a smile on my face.
Ford says he encourages every other province to do the same. Canada's Prime Minister is in the UK following a summit for securing Ukraine's future. The summit was called after a heated meeting Friday between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and U.S. President Donald Trump. Canada's High Commissioner to the UK, Ralph Goodale, said the summit focused on European security and Ukraine would be an important sign of solidarity.
The meeting with 15 or 20 international leaders saying together collectively with a strong voice that Ukraine matters, that peace and security there matters, and that we're standing firmly with the people of Ukraine is a very important international statement.
Leaders left the summit Sunday with a 4-point plan that includes the UK and France's coalition of the willing to secure peace in Ukraine with a limited month-long ceasefire. The UK and France will work on the peace plan to present to the United States. This will include putting boots on the ground in Ukraine. But Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says it's too early for Canada to make that commitment. However, Trudeau says Canada will continue to support Ukraine.
Canada has been one of the strongest countries in support of Ukraine from the very beginning. For over 10 years now, We've been training Ukrainian defense forces. We're up to close to 40,000 Ukrainian troops that we have trained over the years. We're continuing to play a significant role in training, as is the UK, who is our primary partner in that. We've also invested close to $20 billion in supports for Ukraine, military, economic, and other. And we're going to continue to be there to support Ukraine as necessary with whatever it takes for as long as it takes.
The Prime Minister is also to meet with King Charles today. Trudeau says national sovereignty is a matter of importance for Canadians and for his Monday audience with King Charles. This is in reference to Trump's comments regarding Canada becoming the 51st state.
I look forward to sitting down with His Majesty tomorrow. As always, we will discuss matters of importance to Canada and to Canadians, and I can tell you that nothing seems more important to Canadians right now than standing up for our sovereignty and our independence as a nation.
Here in the West, Alberta unveiled its budget last Thursday, which is projecting a $5.2 billion deficit. Premier Danielle Smith defended her government's budget and also a tax cut that was promised 2 years ago, in spite of the deficit and the warning of incoming tariffs.
After the budget is over, we convene and we go through and we look at line by line and program by program, every program that we have, to see if we can cut wasteful spending and cut redundancies. And so once we get through the estimates process, I'm going to reconvene that committee, and we're going to have to sharpen our pencils and dig deeper on that. We already have a very generous basic personal exemption, so people are able to earn just over $20,000 before they pay personal income taxes provincially. And then when they do start paying taxes, it's now going to be at a lower rate, 8%. And so in my view, it targets the support to those at the lower end of the income scale the most, and those are the folks who are going to be most impacted when we see inflation as a result of tariffs. So that's part of it, is that we're dealing with a tariff crisis. We know it's very likely, if it's implemented and we get into a trade war, it's going to put consumers in the crosshairs, and we wanted to be able to give them some dollars to be able to manage that increase.
Lethbridge West MLA Rob Miyashiro spoke with reporters on Monday, sharing his thoughts on the latest provincial budget. He says this budget effectively cuts crucial services that Albertans need and fails to take account of both inflation and population growth.
Albertans ask for a strong public health care that's where and when and where they need it. Instead, the provincial budget effectively cuts public health care and doubles down on more private surgeries, which are at the heart of the corrupt care scandal. Also, healthcare is seeing a plethora of cuts across 8 different areas, from primary care to Indigenous health. Albertans ask for strong public education. Instead, the budget effectively cuts education funding, keeping Alberta at the lowest per student funding in Canada. Albertans ask for safer communities. The UCP's budget cuts community and public safety services. Albertans ask for a stable economy that allows them to thrive. The UCP's budget has no plan for creating new jobs or addressing the tariffs that will wreak havoc on our industries and communities.
Miyashiro was also particularly critical on AISH payment cuts by $12 million, which support approximately 77,000 Albertans. The provincial budget includes increases to the Family Support for Children with Disabilities program, as well as the Persons with Developmental Disabilities program. However, according to Inclusion Alberta, while the increased funding is appreciated, it is nowhere close to what is necessary. Inclusion Alberta's CEO, Trish Bowman, says it is due to years of underfunding.
We heard from hundreds of families in our survey alone, families waiting for years to get access to really necessary supports. And that's within certainly the FSCD program, and in the PDD program. If your needs aren't identified as critical and urgent, there is no timeline for you to be getting support. So people are waiting a very long time for access to much needed support. So while the increase to PDD and FSCD are again, as I said, appreciative, they're not going to address the backlog and the wait lists that families are currently experiencing. And it really is, drives many, many families into, a state of crisis.
Bowman adds the increased funding does not even keep up with the province's inflation and population growth targets. Well, a huge rally made up of education support workers gathered at Mayor McGrath Drive near Henderson Park on Saturday. About 250 union members, many of them part of CUPE, were met with cheers and honking horns from passerbys in support of higher wages. Rory Gill, president of CUPE Alberta, says the latest budget was abysmally low when it comes to funding proper education and wages. He says workers in Lethbridge will start mediation talks for a new deal this week. And if they don't get what they want, they will join the 6,500 provincial education support workers on strike. Just on Monday, the Grand Yellowhead School Division that represents the communities of Jasper, Hinton, and Edson, among others, announced their intention to strike. The investigation into Alberta Health Services procurement and contracting processes begins today. Deputy Minister of Jobs, Economy and Trade Christopher McPherson informed Alberta Premier Danielle Smith that Raymond E. Wyant, former Chief Judge of the Provincial Court of Manitoba, will lead the investigation. McPherson says, quote, appointed under the Government Organization Act, Judge Wyant will operate independently of government. The Government of Alberta will provide Judge Wyant with access to all relevant documents held by its departments and AHS, as well as facilitate interviews with relevant individuals, end quote. The cost of the investigation is budgeted at $500,000, and Judge Wyant will be paid $31,900 per month, which is the same remuneration rate as the Chief Justice of the Alberta Court of Justice. Red Deer will be home to 2 state-of-the-art cardiac catheterization labs. This is part of a $1.8 billion redevelopment project for Red Deer Regional Hospital announced by the Alberta government.
These labs will have the necessary tools and equipment to enable healthcare professionals to visualize a patient's heart and locate abnormalities. Having these services available in Red Deer will reduce wait times, eliminate the need for travel, and help patients get the care they need sooner. At the same time, having these services available in Red Deer will free up capacity in Calgary and Edmonton, improving health outcomes for Albertans living in those corridors as well.
The Red Deer Regional Hospital redevelopment project is expected to be completed and fully commissioned by the year 2031. For the meantime, an interim cardiac catheterization lab has been announced and will be located within the existing center in a space currently used as a physician's lounge. Construction of that lab is expected to begin this fall. Lethbridge fire crews responded to a large grass fire on Friday afternoon in the coulees near Scenic Drive and the Mountain View Cemetery. 5 stations and 26 firefighters were able to quickly extinguish the blaze before it could spread to nearby properties. 1 firefighter reportedly sustained an injury. The cause of the fire is undetermined. The Professional Bull Riding Cup Series returned to Lethbridge this past Friday and Saturday at the visitlethbridge.com arena. The event showcased the nation's best bull riders for the Tour's second stop of the year. BCN's Landon Hickok has more.
PBR's Canada Cup Series made its annual return to Lethbridge last weekend. The 2-day South Country Co-op Showdown featured the nation's best riders, including Dakota Butter, Aaron Roy, and Nick Tetz. Saturday's sold-out championship event witnessed Nick Tetz grab first place for the weekend. Tetz of Calgary went a perfect 3-for-3 performance to capture his 5th straight PBR Cup Series event in Lethbridge. He now currently leads the race for the Canada Championship. Should he win it this year, he will become the first rider ever to win the championship in back-to-back seasons and tie Aaron Roy with the most national title victories with 3. Jake Gardner also delivered a perfect 3-for-3 performance to secure 2nd place and 3rd place in the national standings. PBR has now hosted in Lethbridge for 7 straight years. The Cup Series next stop will be in Brandon, Manitoba in May, with the national finals hosted by Edmonton in November. For Bridge City News, I'm Landon Hickok.
Some great footage there. Well, Canadian comic icon Brent Butt will be recognized as one of the University of Lethbridge's 2025 honorary degree recipients. The creator, writer, and star of the hit TV show Corner Gas has fashioned a comedic career spanning more than 35 years. He will also be headlining a comedy show fundraiser in Lethbridge in support of Food for Thought, which is a student food security program, on May the 25th. The university will present Butt with an honorary Doctor of Laws honoris causa, meaning for the sake of the honor, at the spring 2025 convocation ceremony on May the 30th. Other honorary degree recipients will include acclaimed writer David Robertson, former U Lethbridge Chancellor Charlie Weaselhead, conductor Kirk Musprat, and community advocates Bernadine and Toby Boulay. Lethbridge's Centre Village Mall will soon showcase model structures made of canned soups, veggies, and tuna. Construction is back once again. It's the international hunger relief charity that raises millions of pounds of food each year for local food banks. It's accomplished by building structures out of food cans. This year's event will be held March 6th. Daryl Schalk, board chair with the construction event, explains which food banks the initiative will support and how the event works.
We support the Lethbridge Food Bank, the Interfaith Food Bank, the Lethbridge Polytechnic Food Bank, and the University of Lethbridge Food Bank as well. We get teams organized, and it often involves the local engineering firms and architectural firms because there's a fair amount of design that goes into each structure. So the building happened on one day. It takes place on Thursday, March 6th, and then the structures will be on display until April 3rd. And then we'll take all the food down and box it up, and it gets donated to the local food banks. We haven't set a goal specifically for this year. We're just trying to make it bigger and better. Last year, we were able to raise over 10,000 cans of food, equating to about $36,000 in support for the local food banks. We just want to see the city of Lethbridge, the community, get involved in the event and come by and check it out with a food donation, or you can donate online, and then you can vote for your People's Choice Award.
Those structures are just amazing, aren't they? Schultz says construction was founded in 1992 in the United States. Well, you might ask yourself, what can a dollar do? The truth is, a dollar can make a big difference when it comes to giving back. United Way of Lethbridge and Southwestern Alberta and the 365 Small Business Circle invites businesses and individuals to donate $1 a day. The executive director of United Way Lethbridge, Jackie Zalesak, explains how each dollar will be used.
$1 a day makes a huge, significant impact in our communities across Lethbridge and Southwestern Alberta. It can give an opportunity for families to be fed with a food bank hamper. It can support Meals on Wheels program, feed seniors or persons with disabilities. It can help support kids that are in Safe Haven program with our summer day camps. Loonie adds up, and you can see what that significance makes in our communities. So if you want to get involved, it's a tax receivable donation, and we'll be happy to see where your impact will be. And you can designate it to where you want it to go, or you can help support our community fund, and we can help spread the wealth and make a collective impact as well.
Research shows that regular, smaller donations can lead to greater personal satisfaction, donor retention, and long-term funding for charitable organizations. In international news, Pope Francis is facing new setbacks in his battle against pneumonia. With more details, here is Nicole Winfield with the Associated Press.
The Vatican is reporting another setback in Pope Francis's recovery from pneumonia. Doctors say he suffered 2 more respiratory crises today, and they had to put him back on the non-invasive mechanical ventilation. They also had to perform what's called a bronchoscopy, where they snaked a tube down into his airways, guided by a camera, to suction out the mucus and secretions that he's not been able to cough out on his own. They speak of these episodes as in the past tense, meaning they are over, but they are still saying that his prognosis is guarded, meaning he is not out of danger.
And the Vatican says the mucus was his body's reaction to the original pneumonia infection and not a new infection, given laboratory tests don't indicate any new bacteria. Well, back here in southern Alberta, after a gorgeous sunny weekend, Monday saw a light dusting of snow on the ground, but these winter-like conditions won't be around for long. Full weather details are up next. Welcome back. Well, you know, after such a warm, beautiful weekend, we did see some snowfall today. I mean, yesterday, Sunday, I was sitting out on my deck in my sundress. Today, we were expecting 2 to 4 centimeters of snow. Okay, welcome to, it's not quite spring yet. Welcome to winter in Alberta. Didn't get anywhere near the 2 to 4 centimeters as expected, but there was some light snow there that should be tapering off this evening. We still hovered above our above freezing today. So we actually got higher than our daytime high. We saw about 2 degrees today, 5 degrees tomorrow though, and some sunshine, no more snow. And mainly cloudy on Wednesday, high of 5 degrees, up to 7 on Thursday, 12 on Friday. There's those double digits again, and then 16 both on Saturday and Sunday. So I fully expect to be sitting out on the deck again this coming weekend. Average high for this time of year, 4 degrees. Average low, -8. 18 was our record high on this day back in 1986. And the record low for this day happened in 1960, and it was -34. Okay, sun rose this morning at 7:11. Sunset this evening at 6:17. So we are well over 11 hours of daylight today. Okay. On the west coast, looking at periods of drizzle, high of 9 degrees in Victoria, high of 11 in Vancouver rather. And then in Edmonton and Calgary, clear skies, high of 3 degrees in Edmonton and 4 degrees in Calgary. As we're looking to the rest of the prairies, we're going to see a mix of sun and cloud there in Saskatoon, -2 for the high. Regina and Winnipeg both seeing a slight chance of flurries, 30% chance tomorrow, -5 in Regina, -4 in Winnipeg. Now in Toronto and Ottawa, that's where we're going to be seeing more precipitation. So both of those cities in the morning are expecting flurries mixed with some ice pellets. Could see a risk of freezing rain there as well. And then by the afternoon, that's going to turn to showers for both of those cities. High of 5 degrees in Toronto, high of 2 in Ottawa, and in Montreal sitting at 0, but 2 to 4 centimeters of snow. So a little bit more snow happening in Montreal tomorrow. Now, as we look to Fredericton, we're seeing sunshine in the morning and then an increasing of clouds. And as we get to late afternoon, we're going to be seeing that 30% chance of flurries right there, high of 0. Mix of sun and cloud in Halifax tomorrow, also expecting a high of 0, -3 in Charlottetown with clear skies, and then -6 the expected high tomorrow in St. John's with some flurries and some wind there. So there you have it. That is your forecast. Canada Post is accusing the union representing more than 55,000 workers of showing little meaningful movement during mediated negotiations this weekend to end a labor dispute that saw employees ordered back to work late last year. A statement from Canada Post Sunday said it tabled a workable and affordable weekend delivery model to make it competitive for parcel delivery using a dedicated part-time workforce. A union statement released Sunday said that negotiations broke down again. It pointed to Canada Post's push for serious rollbacks, which it claims would gut its agreements and, quote, explode part-time and temporary work, threatening full-time jobs. Stats Canada will offer its latest snapshot of the job market at the end of this week when it releases its labor force survey for February. The Canadian economy added 76,000 jobs in January as the unemployment rate ticked down 0.1 percentage points to 6.6%. That marked the second straight monthly decline after peaking at 6.9% in November. A wind farm in southern Alberta is citing regulatory delays as well as significant delays in the delivery of components like transformers for pushing back the construction of the facility. Tarragon Canada Peace Butte applied to the Alberta Utilities Commission last month to extend the in-service deadline for the facility near 7 persons from November 1st, 2025 to the same day in 2026. It might also not enter commercial operations until mid-2027. From an original 60-tower layout, the facility's new layout comprises just 20 towers with higher capacity turbines that will produce the same maximum amount of power at 120 megawatts. Now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 391 points on the day to finish at 25,001. The Dow was down 649 points to 43,191. The S&P 500 was down 104 to 5849, and the Nasdaq was down 497 points to finish at 18,350. West Texas Intermediate oil was down $1.32 to 68.44 U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was up 33 cents to 4.16 U.S. Gold was up 35.59 to 28.9250 U.S. an ounce, and silver was up 55 cents to 31.68 U.S. an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.57 per bushel. Barley is at $6.53. Canola is at $14.65, and corn is at $8 per bushel. Live cattle April contract was down 40 cents to $192.25. Feeder cattle were down 95 cents to $274.02. Lean hogs April contract was up 3 cents at $83.70, and the Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours at 69.10 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, former Prime Minister Stephen Harper is taking shots at the Liberal leadership front runner. Harper has accused Mark Carney of taking undeserved credit for steering the Canadian economy out of the global financial crisis more than 15 years ago. But he says it was the then Finance Minister, Jim Flaherty, who made the hard calls. Coming up after the break, our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari gives us her take on last week's drama between U.S. President Trump and Ukraine's President Zelensky. Also, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also visit our website or our YouTube page anytime for more of our interviews and stories.
Outrage and viral reactions were sparked across the globe Friday following a tense meeting between two presidents. To discuss this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari. Lisa, for those who haven't heard about this yet, let's catch them up to speed. The White House was a drama house on Friday when a meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky got derailed. The two countries were set to sign a minerals deal, but as tensions rose, Vance accused Zelensky of being, quote, disrespectful and ungrateful. Tell us what led up to all of this.
You know, it's an interesting setup, and I like, it was very uncomfortable. It was something that you're not used to watching in a diplomatic setting, particularly when, it's such an important, we knew this was a heated topic. We knew where Donald Trump stands, even when he was campaigning for this second term of his presidency. He talked about ending this senseless war. That's how he refers to it. He talks about a lot of the senseless deaths that are happening, both on the Russian side on the Ukrainian side. And then, of course, as you know, he's perceived to be very pro-Russian. And that is what he's trying to establish, that, no, I'm not pro-Russian. I'm just anti a senseless war. Look, he had a lot of issue with Zelensky going around and getting these blank checks from the Europeans, from the United States, from different world bodies. And again, Donald Trump, being a very, the bottom line kind of guy, didn't believe that this is a war to be won. It's a war to be ended. And that's really the best case scenario for both sides, both the Russians and the Ukrainians. So fast forward to Friday, this meeting in the Oval Office got very, very heated. And I'll just give you some baseline point. The fact that Zelensky comes in, he's not wearing a suit. A lot of people talk about his body language, the way that he's dressed, the way that he comes in with his tone was not professional, was not statesmanlike. He did not come there to have a diplomatic conversation, but to really lay the law down to the American president. And that is where J.D. Vance's lines come in, calling him disrespectful and ungrateful, because to their point, Zelensky, worked behind Trump's back. He comes into the United States in the Oval Office, the highest ranking office in the world, you could argue. And instead of working together and being more constructive and being more respectful, he uses a tone that is disrespectful and demanding and comes off as very unappreciative, ungrateful. So Really, that really is the few pointers for those who missed this, but if you want to watch it, grab the popcorn and watch it on YouTube or somewhere else online, because it is not something that you see every day. These are conversations that may happen all the time, but they don't happen for the public. And I think that that's something that was interesting about this. This was backdoor diplomacy, with us as the viewers in the front row watching. So, it really doesn't take away from the bottom line. It doesn't take away from what will happen. But I do think that it is unfortunate that this was a public showing.
Now, how is the world reacting to all this? Because just before we got started, I was saying, as I was watching the argument, it reminded me of that meme of the angry woman yelling at the cat. And depending on your perspective and what people believe, who's the woman and who's the cat in this argument. But if Zelensky's motive was to use live TV to stir up drama, it probably worked. So do you think this worked out in his favor and, based on how people are reacting around the world?
It depends what you call to his favor. I'll give you some of the reaction from around the world. Let's start in Ukraine. In Ukraine, this was very, very poorly received. They're already working on removing him from power. They believe that the fact that and I talked to a few of my sources inside Ukraine that told me, the media is calling him out for not dressing appropriately, for not acting professionally, for going into, again, the highest office globally and not having a certain professional decorum to defend the Ukrainians, that they lost their positioning because of his behavior, that it was all about him, and it wasn't well received at all. Look, the media is split here in the United States, again, depending on where you stand. Are you for Trump or against Trump? Are you for Russia or for Ukraine? And that really set the stage for a lot of people's opinions on this. And the Europeans, there were some very awkward tweets showing support for Zelensky because it was really showing, lack of support for Donald Trump. It didn't really get to the bottom line. Again, if you really put aside Friday's fiasco in the Oval Office and you look at the situation, whoever wants this war to end will, again, sidestep this conversation and say, what is in the best interest of the Ukrainian people and the Russian people? And it is not Zelensky coming and having a screaming shout with the president of the United States in the Oval Office, regardless of who that president is. So I think that it is very important to look, again, at the facts here and look at the best way out. A lot of people tweeted that the winner of Friday's fiasco was Putin, because this debate gives Putin more clout. And a lot of people said that that's not true. The fact is that Donald Trump has already cornered Putin to accept a certain deal. We cannot rewind the 3-year war that we have had. We have to just look at the facts and say, what's the best case scenario that we can get right now? And for Zelensky, that's not to get more money and to continue fighting. It's not to have more, casualties on either side. It is to end the war. And I think Donald Trump's very frank about that, to say, he said to him, you're going to cause World War III the way that you're going. And that there's some truth to that, right? Like, who wants this war to continue? There's nuclear wars weapons on the table as an option on the Russian side. I think Zelensky has to be more realistic and less about him. I think a lot of people think that, if he is going to advocate for the Ukrainian people, it really should be about what is in their best interest.
And you touched on how Zelensky has some damage control to do for himself amid calls for him to resign. Let's hear more about that.
Yeah, it's interesting because, he's brought the people this far, right? And then they're trying to work a deal, I saw some stuff floating around about getting Ukraine NATO membership in exchange for him to resign, or agreeing to this minerals deal and then having him resign. It would be an interesting journey for him to have brought the Ukrainian people to this point and then have him resign. But there are calls for him to resign back at home. With regards to NATO membership, it's not going to happen. That is not something that Russia started this war because of that. One of the reasons for that is that their fear of Ukraine getting NATO membership. It would totally encircle Russia, make them vulnerable to many things. But right now, the deal that's on the table might require Zelensky to resign if he can't move forward and really participate in a meaningful way to end this war.
Now, in response, amid this argument, European nations have stepped up to help Prime Minister Keir Starmer, along with French President Emmanuel Macron, have put forward a framework for a peace plan between Ukraine and Russia, but it relies heavily on support from the U.S. Tell us more about this.
Right. So, Macron has worked for a very long time to at least try to insert himself in the conversation here to try to get a ceasefire. He has not been able to. If you recall that long table, it was excessively long. It looked like the Last Supper. To have Putin on one side and Macron on the other, and they didn't get anywhere with that. So now that the United States has really moved the needle to at least bring Putin to the negotiating table and to actually get somewhere with this, they are reinserting themselves again. They want to make sure that this war ends without Putin getting a leg up. I'm sure that I don't want to speak for him, but it seems like Donald Trump will want to do the same. He's not make America great again doesn't mean make Russia great again. It means make America great again. And for that reason, I think that Trump is a deals kind of guy. His bottom line is to end this war. I don't think it means, giving Putin everything that he wants, and it doesn't mean to give Zelensky everything that he wants or to give him nothing. It is a compromise, and they'll have to come together. It will help to have the Europeans there to buttress that deal. But again, we have to make sure that the Europeans are on the same team, that they're working alongside the same interests parallel to the United States and not working against us. And hopefully we can take this forward. But I think for them to step up after that meeting to show full support for Zelensky is not a good look either. I mean, if you want to bring Putin to the negotiating table, you can't work in a one-sided way. You have to act as the unbiased moderator here. And I think it's very difficult to do that in this war. I think everyone's shown their true colors. Everyone knows where everyone stands. And now it's just a matter of truly giving each side the concessions that they will accept to end the war.
And European leaders are grappling with how to handle relations with the U.S. since Trump regained control of the White House. They are on the edge amid the prospect of Trump pulling 20,000 troops from the continent. Can you explain this?
Yeah, it's interesting because, can't live with them, can't live without them kind of deal. Trump has done something very well, I think, and people will debate this, but I'm just looking really from a foreign policy standpoint. If his goal is to, and again, this is not for or against Trump, but this is just looking at the optics of how things are, the chips are falling. If the goal is to make America great again, then he uses our foreign policy aid, money, resources, weapons, manpower as leverage. So when you say to the Europeans, we're going to leave, or if you say to, the Pakistanis or the Indians or whomever's getting a check from us, we're going to pull the aid. If you're pulling the aid from the Palestinians who are using that money for terrorism, that's used as leverage. I know this conversation will go into how about the Canadian tariffs, and we can get into that maybe later or maybe next week. But the truth is, when you say to the Europeans, we're going to pull our manpower, it's concerning to them because obviously there is a support system there, but also, and there's teamwork there. But again, Trump's message to the Europeans is that we have to work together if we are going to use our resources in the region.
And at least 2 people are dead, with several others injured in a suspected car ramming in the West German city of Mannheim today. It's worth noting this came amid a busy carnival season as well.
Yes, and this is the second car ramming in Germany, and the second terror attack today. We had another terror attack in Israel. Look, terrorism again on the rise. This is your do-it-yourself type of terrorism. If you have a car, you could use it. If you have a knife, you could use it to stab people. Even if you get one death, you're a martyr. You're going to heaven. You're going to get your 72 virgins. That's how it goes. And this is exactly what we're seeing. All of these radicalized elements on the ground, whether they're in Europe or the Middle East, using whatever weapons they have to cause this kind of jihad locally. Germany has had an issue. So has France. We're seeing this, really play out in real time. But as you said, carnival season, we saw something very similar. New Orleans here, New Year's Eve in the United States. So we're no strangers to that kind of behavior as well. But time to root out these elements, not to defend them, not to allow our college students to be rooting for them, and to truly root out this disease.
And as you alluded to, there was a stabbing attack in Haifa today at a central transit hub, resulting in the death of 1 person and wounding 4 others. Lisa, what are the details of this horrific act?
Yeah, this is an Arab Israeli, somebody who lived inside Israel and was, again, enjoying the benefits of being an Israeli citizen and living there. Went on a stabbing spree, killed a 70-year-old man, injured a 15-year-old and a few others. Again, a disease. What ideology causes you to go out and use a knife to take someone's life? He was killed on the spot. The terrorist was killed on the spot. And prevented him from going on and stabbing others. But these were people that were on their morning commute. These were people who were just going about their daily life, a 15-year-old, a 70-year-old. I mean, to lose their life because of one's ideology that thinks you shouldn't live and inhabit this planet, it's really crazy. And what's crazier, Naveen, is that ideology is spreading to us. It's not just in between the Arabs and the Israelis. This is something that has spread to Europe, to the United States, to Canada, and we live among people who feel this way, that want Canadians dead, that want Americans dead, that are burning the American flag on our streets because this is the ideology that they subscribe to.
And as the temporary ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas was to expire, President Trump's envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, proposed a temporary ceasefire extension, which was agreed to by Israel. Do you know under what conditions Israel agreed?
You know, Israel has agreed to stopping the war, continuing, and they have also stopped the aid that is going in, because what people don't know is that over the last few weeks where we had this first phase of the ceasefire, aid was going into Israel. I mean, you don't really hear of any country giving their enemies aid, food, supplies while they're fighting the same said enemy. And now that enemy has food and supplies for the next 4 months. So they have decided to stop that aid. And that's all you see in the headlines, that Israel is stopping aid to the poor Palestinian people. But you know that aid was always confiscated by Hamas, and they're the ones who allocate and ration and hoard that aid. So it wasn't really going to the Palestinian people anyway. And then you have, you know, the continuation. So there will be further discussions. There are still more than 60 hostages being kept by Hamas. We have dead bodies. We have young people who are hopefully still alive, and Israel is trying to do whatever they can in the next series of negotiations to get those people back as soon as possible. To think that people have been kept for over 500 days in captivity and the world is silent. These are civilians, young people, old people that are just being held hostage by a terror organization, again, because of that same deadly, diseased ideology. You know, hopefully this next phase and this White House will be able to negotiate the release of those innocent civilians.
Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari. Lisa, thanks so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
Many of us know people who adhere to a vegan diet for one reason or another. Is it actually a healthier way to go, or does it have some drawbacks? Today's guest is going to chat with us about that. Jillian Hallworth, she is the chair of exercise science, who also specializes in biology and nutrition at Lethbridge Polytechnic. Jillian, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you with us. Can you first of all tell us a little bit about the kind of programs that you're teaching at Lethbridge Polytechnic?
Yeah, like you mentioned, I'm the chair of the exercise science program currently, but teach mostly in human nutrition, anatomy and physiology, and various health and wellness courses at the Polytechnic.
And can you explain specifically what a vegan diet is? Because before we started recording, you said that there's different levels, or there's certain things that some vegans may eat and while others may avoid.
Yeah, exactly. So a vegan diet in itself excludes all animal products. There's no fish, no meat, no dairy, eggs, or honey, and it's strictly plant-based. So the folks who adhere to a vegan diet are consuming things like fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds exclusively.
What about vegans that are okay with eating things like eggs and dairy, though?
Yeah, so there is a varying degree of a plant-based diet. Again, a strict vegan would avoid all animal products, and that includes dairy, eggs, and sometimes processed foods that contain animal derivatives. Things like, before we started recording, mentioned gummy bears or Jell-O that may be made with gelatin. On the other hand, some people identify more as plant-based, so they still occasionally consume dairy and eggs and have some type of dietary flexibility. So they would fall under maybe the vegetarian camp, and you can get more specific into, say, an ovo-lacto vegetarian who would consume eggs and dairy.
Okay, and how popular is going vegan? Do you have like any stats or idea on the percentage of Canadian vegans?
Yeah, as you might imagine, that's kind of hard to find specific, statistics on, as dietary preferences kind of change with trends. But overall, we see that veganism has gained popularity globally, and that includes Canada, where plant-based eating just generally is on the rise. And some of the online searches for plant-based products or vegan-related topics has increased by, it shows about 113% since 2016. According to a London Free Press study that was based off of some Google Trends. But like I mentioned, as you might kind of expect, some of these trends do follow popular media, social media. And so it's hard to say exactly how many Canadians follow a vegan diet. But there was a Statista survey in 2018 that showed roughly about 850,000 Canadians are vegan, with 2.3 million vegetarian, and many people indicating that they're considering reducing their meat consumption.
What are the factors that are increasing this popularity? You mentioned some media influence. Is it other factors as well that are kind of pushing people to go more vegan? Like, are they wanting to just eat healthier, or is it do they want to become vegan to maybe like help reduce their carbon footprint, or do something for climate change?
Yeah, the top reasons that people tend to report for going vegan are animal welfare and environmental.
And what are some of the health benefits from a vegan diet?
Research that's linked to a vegan diet shows that the diet could lower risk for certain chronic conditions like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and certain types of cancers. And it's typically because the diet is generally higher in fiber, lower in saturated fats, and that can improve cholesterol levels and generally support cardiovascular health.
And growing up, we've been taught that everything in moderation is okay, but what are some of the potential problems we can experience when we leave out entire food groups like meats and dairy?
Yeah, cutting out entire food groups, again, like meat and dairy, could introduce a person to susceptibility for certain nutrient deficiencies. And that's particularly for nutrients like iron, vitamin B12, calcium, and omega-3 fatty acids. It's really important if a person is making any type of elimination to their diet, be it for environmental or animal rights reasons, that they're carefully planning their diet to ensure that they're getting the balanced and adequate nutrients that they need.
And prior to our interview, we were talking a little bit about you can't trust everything that you read on social media. One thing that's out there is that soy is often part of the vegan diet and can even act as a substitute for many ingredients that are outside of the vegan diet. However, there's numerous articles that you can read on various social media sites that suggest soy can potentially negatively affect men by lowering testosterone and raising estrogen levels. But other experts call that a myth. What are your thoughts?
That's a pretty loaded question. That's a big
I thought
debate.
It was being balanced there.
Well, like you mentioned, there are as everything with nutrition, there's opinions on both sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of soy, it is an incredibly well-balanced plant-based protein. It has all of the amino acids that a person needs. And so my opinion would be tofu or other soy products, things like tempeh, they're a great substitute for proteins that could otherwise be missing in the diet. In terms of some of the things that we feed ourselves, soy would not be on the top list of my concerns.
I see. And what types of foods do vegans usually substitute for the missing proteins? We've talked about soy, and which also like tofu, which is soy-based.
Yeah, so vegans can get protein from a number of different foods: beans, lentils, tofu, tempeh, a product called seitan, quinoa, chickpeas, any of your pulses. And those plant-based proteins can quite easily meet the daily requirements when consumed in adequate amounts and ensuring that there's variety.
Now, you mentioned one ingredient there, seitan. I've never heard of that. What is it?
It's from my understanding, a wheat product. It's derived from wheat.
Interesting. I've never heard of that. I've heard all the others, like the quinoa and all the pulses, and but yeah, that one really caught me off guard because I never heard that one before.
That's good.
Now, I often hear that supplements are necessary with a vegan diet to ensure calcium, minerals, and vitamins are kept at the proper levels. Are there any recommendations of what vegans should be taking just to make sure that they are balanced with all the nutrients that their body needs?
Yeah, so since some of the nutrients that we mentioned before, things like vitamin B12, omega-3s, iron, and calcium could be harder to obtain solely from plants, certain folks, those who follow a vegan diet, say, for example, might benefit from supplements or fortified foods. And of course, as with any nutrient replacement or any supplementation, it's important that a person's consulting with their healthcare provider in order to ensure what supplements they need, what's necessary for them.
Now, when it comes to a vegan diet, should we be concerned about the overall cost? Is it more or less expensive? Because it seems like when you go to the supermarket, all of the whole foods, the raw foods, there tends to be more volatility with the pricing. And because I've noticed my grocery bill has gone up quite a lot over the last few years.
Yeah, and I think we've all probably noticed that, right? Groceries have gotten more expensive over the past couple of years, regardless of what diet you're consuming. And a vegan diet can vary in its cost. Whole plant foods, things like grains and beans, are often quite affordable. They can be dried, they can be canned, and that's typically a quite cost-effective way of getting a nice variety of nutrients. If you're able to eat in-season vegetables or frozen vegetables, that's another great way to make a vegan diet more cost-effective. But when you start to get into those specialty vegan products, things like plant-based meats or dairy alternatives, that certainly starts to add up. And maybe directing the budget around whole foods rather than some of those processed vegan alternatives could help a person looking to keep their costs low.
I remember growing up, my mom would always insist that we eat a vegetarian lunch and save the meat for supper. And she was always saying, like she would, growing up in an Indian family, my mom would often cook dal and rice for lunch, which is like lentils, and she was saying how affordable it was. And so even when I get like a little homesick or I miss my parents, I'll cook dal and rice just as a little bit of a comfort food. Very affordable, actually.
Well, and a great option, going back to the protein conversation that we had, right? Saying like, is soy a good option? I mentioned that it's considered a complete protein. It has all of the amino acids that you need. Eating something like dal, which has your lentils and your rice, makes sure that you're getting that complete amino acid complement. Rice is missing one of the essential amino acids. Lentils are missing the other, or another, not the other, but another essential amino acid. And so when you pair those two incomplete proteins together, you get all of the essential amino acids that you need. So it's a fabulous pairing.
Will a vegan diet help lose weight? And if so, why and how?
Some people do lose weight on a vegan diet, often because it's lower in calories and it's higher in fiber, which can promote fullness, make a person feel more satiated in between meals. And so a well-balanced vegan diet could aid in weight management. But like any weight loss, it really comes into energy balance. Are you consuming less energy than you're expending? If so, weight loss is more likely. So it really depends. Again, folks who maybe rely more heavily on some of those processed or ultra processed vegan foods might find it a little bit more challenging for weight management if, again, energy balance is in a surplus.
How difficult is it to stick to a vegan diet if you're on the road a lot or you travel for work and maybe you have to eat in restaurants more often?
Yeah, sticking to a vegan diet on the road can be challenging, but more and more restaurants now are offering vegan-friendly options, or they might indicate on the menu with a V or a leaf or something. menu option that it's a vegan friendly or a plant-based option. Some places might require a bit of flexibility or creativity. Some folks might find it easier to order sides or ask to modify menu items. I always say it's a good idea to pull up the menu online first if you can to see what your options are. Most establishments have their menus posted online and have allergen menus that complement that, so you can make the choices that suit your lifestyle.
And generally, sticking to a new diet or a healthier diet can be challenging no matter what type of diet it is, especially like if you're accustomed to eating a certain type of food. For me, driving past those golden arches, I'd want to sink my teeth into a Big Mac, or craving that steak when maybe I shouldn't be eating it like every week, but as a treat. So, what advice can you give to those that want to get onto a vegan diet, but maybe don't have as much willpower as they need?
Willpower and moderation are two words that have come up here that are challenging for folks, right? I think it all comes down to your why. If you're deciding to consume a plant-based diet just because it's the trendy thing to do, it's probably going to be harder to adhere to. So figuring out some type of reason or some type of motivation that aligns with your values and your beliefs is going to make those decisions just a little bit easier.
And if you're going to try a vegan diet, what should you do? Should you just jump all in, or is it better just to ease into it bit by bit?
Transitioning gradually allows time for your gastrointestinal system to adjust. Like we mentioned before, there's a lot of fiber in a vegan diet if you are sort of relying more so on those whole plant foods, beans, your vegetables. And so easing into that can make that transition a little bit more comfortable on your gastrointestinal system, and can also make the diet easier to maintain long term. Going all in, of course, is an option, but it can take some extra planning in order to avoid those nutrient gaps and even food fatigue, getting tired of the same things if you're consuming those over and over again. I'd say easy.
And a lot of these ingredients that we talked about, these are high fiber ingredients that could potentially be really beneficial for those with diabetes. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so fiber helps to slow the blood sugar response. So when you're eating a meal that has a good amount of fiber and also has protein, instead of seeing your blood sugar levels spike and then really quickly drop, that fiber helps to slow the absorption of glucose into the bloodstream. And so it is quite beneficial for folks who struggle or are impacted by diabetes, but also folks who aren't, for regulating the blood sugar levels following a meal.
Jillian Hallworth is the chair of exercise science, specializing in biology and nutrition at Lethbridge Polytechnic. Jillian, thanks so much for sharing all that information with us today.
Jeff, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.